Yes, welcome back for our last method of solving quadratic equations, and that method is completing squares. Remember, we saw how to solve quadratic equations using factorization method. Hope you understood it. Thank you. After that, we went to how to solve quadratic equations using what formula. Thank you. You understood it. Now let's go to completing squares. How do you solve a quadratic? How do you solve a quadratic equation using using completing squares? So our today's topic is now solving quadratic equations using completing squares. Wow, I like this method because we use this method. It helps us to solve very many other things, because we can use this completing squares to prove to very many things. One, it can help us in solving quadratic equations, as the one we are going to see. We can also use completing squares to find for the maximum and the minimum values of quadratic expressions. We can also use completing squares in very many things, like in proving or in deriving quadratic formula itself. We use completing squares. So look, be careful and understand everything. So we are going to begin with, let's solve some simple equation here using this method. And this equation, this time around, let it be x squared plus 3x minus 1 equals to 0. Minus 1 equals to 0. So how do you do this? So with completing squares, what you have to do is, before answering any quadratic equation using completing square, you must make sure that the coefficient of x squared is 1. That's the rule number 1. This coefficient, it must be 1. That's the rule number 1. Let's proceed. We shall see other rules as we go on. So the first thing is, we have to take this constant, we take it to this side. When we take it there, we shall get x squared plus 3x is equal to 1. So that's what we get. If we take that negative 1 to that side, remember it's a negative. When it crosses equal signs, it has to automatically be positive. Then the next step is, you see this coefficient here. The coefficient of x is 3. So what we do is say x squared plus 3x plus, you get that coefficient of x, you divide it by 2, then you square it, then equals to 1. Also you add it to both sides. When you add it to both sides, you haven't changed anything, my friends, because this still can cancel out with this and you go back here. So I haven't changed anything. So when I look at this point, I can be able to say that now x, this squared, if I get x then plus 3 out of 2, then I take square outside, this is the same, because when you expand this literally, you have to come up with this expression here. So I haven't changed anything also. So this will be equal to 1 plus this will be 3 squared is 9 out of 4. So from that point, you also come up with what your left hand side to remain like that. It would be x out of 3, x plus 3 out of 2 squared is equal to, when I have 1 plus 1 plus 9 out of 4, I think you will get 13 out of 4. So when I get 13 out of 4, I take the square root both sides. When I take the square root both sides, that means this 2 will cancel out with this. So this side I remain with x plus 3 out of 2. This is same as, remember, for a square root, it is very important to note this. A square root, you get the result is either positive or negative. That's why you have to include this sign here, plus or negative, because the answer you get must be either positive or negative. Then the square root of 13, it remains as 13. Then the square root of 4, it is 2. Okay, therefore the answers we have here will also be 2. Either we shall have x plus 3 out of 2 is equal to, let's begin with the positive one, root of 13 out of 4. So this will be x is equal to plus of root of 13 out of 4 minus 3 out of 2. So this will be, so using your calculator, I think you will get something like 0.30 something. You can check. Then that will be our first answer. Then our second answer, it will be, or x plus 3 out of 2 is equal to minus, this time to be minus root of 13 out of 2. Also, when you compute it the same way using your calculator, I'm sure you will get x as a negative 3.30. So these are our answers. So using factorization, this to find for this problem here, it may be quite challenging because it's not easy to find the factors that when you multiply them you get -1, and when you add them you get 3. It may look a bit challenging. However, if you are given such a problem, the only way you can attempt this problem is using formula. If not formula, you can also use this method of completing squares. So, well, for completing squares, you can also use this method. As I told you earlier, that for completing squares, you can also use it to find the maximum or the minimum values of quadratic expressions. So, actually, our next journey will be on how to find the maximum and minimum values of quadratic expressions. For now, let's stop from here. But this is the same knowledge. With this knowledge, I'm very sure you can be able to attempt all other questions as long as they are asking you to solve them using completing squares. Thank you for watching, and thank you for your time, and have a good day.